Well, hello, I'm in my kitchen again today, but I'm not doing cooking. This is all about houseplants, and sometimes this time of year, we want to start bringing in some green, some freshness. I live in Iowa, and that means January, February, even March can be cold, it can be snowy, it can be windy, and it can just be not a lot of life to look out outside the windows. So instead we bring it indoors. Now, if you follow me a lot, you know I have gardens. I love to keep a lot of plants that I put into a plant room over the winter, but I still every so often go out to random stores and find houseplants and bring them home. And I think we all do this. And the thing is, when we bring them home, sometimes there are some, should we call it best practices? Some things that can do a little bit to do a lot of difference for the plant. Because when you buy these plants, they look beautiful, they look fresh, they look green, they are full of life, they are so lush. But sometimes it seems like soon enough, they don't do as well once they're in your house. Whether it's the conditions of the house, whether it's maybe the way that they're in the container, maybe you're set up for failure. So this is gonna be me having just bought these plants and what I'm gonna do to them. And I wanted to bring you along for it. I just wanted this to be kind of a casual time where I can show you some different things I do and what I look for when I'm buying plants and how maybe I repot them or change them once they're in my house to hopefully extend the life, hopefully for years and years to come, like a lot of my other plants. So today is a lot about ferns because I was in the mood. I was in a fern mood. So we have bird's nest fern. We have a little maidenhair fern, which is my nemesis. It never wants to live. We have a fun ruffly fern, which is kind of in more conjunction with like a Boston fern, a little bit more traditional. So you can see these all come in. You buy them too. They come in these plastic containers, and a lot of times when they're from a big box store, they have these strings that come out from underneath, and this is how they water them. They water them from below, and they put them in a tray, kind of flood the tray with water, and it slowly soaks it up. Because a lot of plants, almost all plants, don't want to be directly watered on top, and let me show you why. Like this bird's nest fern is kind of set up for failure. If you look inside of this container, the crown of the plant where its new leaves come out, which you can see a new leaf down there, but look how the crown is way below the container height. So that means if you would water it from up here and just flood it every so often, just pour water in, its crown is going to be sitting in water. Slowly that causes rot. So if you don't know that, and if you're just watering it, because why wouldn't you? That's how it would look it needs to be, you would actually slowly be rotting the plant. So instead what I like to do is decide what I need to do to give this better life, which is gonna be raising it up. So kind of repotting it. Now, I am someone that likes to put plants in maybe antique containers I have. Sometimes I just pot them up in traditional terracotta containers, but like this one I wanna put inside of a crock, and it actually fits really well if I just put a tray underneath it with like in this plastic pot, but I wanna repot it. So what we're gonna do is check the size here. So we're gonna take it out first. And don't be scared here. You're gonna have that string, see how that string inside of it? It goes up in the plant and then slowly the water wicks into the plant. So what we're doing is, you can see right in here, it's not that the soil's bad, but look how far down in that pot it is. And that's gonna actually be really hard when you water it because it's gonna wanna rot the inside of it. So what I'm gonna do is slowly take a little bit of soil. You can see that, to me, it just makes it easier. I just put some brown craft paper on my island, and then cleanup it's a little bit more of a breeze. And the big thing I think is we're scared sometimes to take apart plants. Don't be. Plants want to live, and their roots here are going to be fine and intact. But what I am going to do is make sure I take it apart just slightly so I can start exposing the crown of that fern. I want that fern to be exposed. I want the crown to be just above soil level. So if you follow me when I'm planting trees, shrubs, perennials, I always say, expose the flare. Have the root flare be right above ground. It's kind of the same with a plant, but you just have to look for it a little bit harder. So I'm opening it up, and you can now see that I'm starting to find where the leaves or the fronds meet the soil level. So that's now where I need to keep it. Now, plants do not want to be inundated with too much soil. So instead of picking a large container or even planting it like in this big a container, I'm going to actually keep it in the size it was in. And I like to water mine differently. I don't have the same system as most of us don't and aren't used to these, so I just remove that. But what I want to do is make sure I have a good soil. And what does that mean? It means one, an organic soil. I want one that has a lot of organic material in it. So it's like a rich compost is in the soil. And how you can tell is when you look at your soil, you should see all those wonderful pieces. Whether it's some bark that's in there, that's gonna be the compost that's breaking down, and that's gonna continually feed your plant naturally. It also has some perlite in it. You don't want those to be foam. If they're foam, it's not real perlite. Perlite's a natural product and should kind of be like a gritty, sandy, rock type texture when you break it apart. See how that does, like that perlite? So what I wanna do is make sure I use this organic and organically rich soil that's gonna be really good for the plant, and it drains really well that way too. No matter what container I'm using, whether it's a plastic container, a terracotta container, I'm gonna always make sure it has good drainage. No plant wants to be inundated with water, and even if you think you don't water a plant a lot, if this wouldn't have drainage, water could be sitting in the very bottom of the plant and the roots slowly could rot in that water. Always have drainage, always. And if you have a hole in the bottom like this, just put a shard of another broken pot, because if you're like me, guys, I always have broken pots. I just do. They just break every so often outside. So what I'm gonna do now is try to get the soil level, and we can reuse some of this, because this is a nice rich soil too, but you can tell already it's still too deep in that pot. See how it sits way too far down? So I'm gonna add some soil back. We're getting it higher. Do you see now how now we're sitting a little bit above? I'm gonna a little bit more soil underneath, because as this will get watered later, the soil will displace a little bit and will compact. So what I'm doing now is just slightly pressing soil around. See how I'm doing that? I'm just slightly pressing it, making it really simple. And I don't want to go too tight, but I want to press it just enough so we can get some of those extra air bubbles out to work out a little bit. That's perfect right there. You don't need to, I think we're always thinking, oh, we need to completely give it a huge pot so it can keep growing. Plants don't like that. They like their roots to be somewhat contained. The watering is easier. Everything's just a little bit easier if we can keep it in a smaller pot. That one's good to go. So in the end here, I'll water it, but for now, that one's perfect. And I can now see the root flare better. So when I water it, I can water it underneath the leaves. It won't sit on the crown. It won't flood it too much, and then let it drip through. So another one I have here is this beauty. What I always want to do, it's a hanging pot, and it could probably hang up for a while, but it's already starting to look a little bound in the pot. So I like to remove it from this pot, and you can see I want to put it in kind of a large antique container. But with my antique ones, I don't like to plant directly in them because I'm a little worried for longevity. I want to keep them nicer longer. This one I'm actually hoping is going to sit behind me once those amaryllis are done and be there. So you can see here we're starting to get some circling, which is good. You're starting to see new fronds. It's kind of tight, it's kind of root bound. See how I have to break it up? That means I'm ready with this one to slightly break it and put it into just a slightly bigger pot, but keep it at the same level because it's happy and it's healthy. So I'm gonna take this container, I just went out to my shed, looked for one I had growing, and I'm gonna do the same organic and organically rich soil. I think we're often worried, is it the right soil? What do I need different soils for different plants? The important part is to have an organic soil that has a lot of organic matter and good compost in it, because that means it's gonna drain well, and that really is gonna be good for most plants. As long as you check the watering, don't overwater, things like that, you should be good. So I'm gonna put this one in here, I'm gonna put the soil back around, and then we'll talk about how to finish up. I have all of them potted up, and now with most plants, people are scared mostly of fertilizing and watering. Any other houseplant like Sansevieria or mother-in-law's tongue, ZZ plants, fiddly figs, water them well, then let them dry out well in between waterings. Ferns are kind of the one exception. They don't like to fully dry out in their container because that can cause them, they're used to more moist environments. They grow in tropical climates, rainforests, they like the moisture all around. One, what can always be good is to spritz them with water every so often. So I love to keep them in a bathroom or here in my kitchen. That's why this one is gonna go eventually back here. So I can remember it, see it daily, think, oh, I wanna spritz it, or oh, I need to water it. Maidenhairs are, they for me, I feel like some of you out there are gonna be like, what do you mean? I have beautiful, huge maiden ferns. Okay, they're the one that sometimes I kind of just treat it as fresh cut flowers because they just don't last the longest for me. But one reason is they like to be spritzed quite a bit. I like to keep mine, or I'm going to keep this one, in an enclosed cloche environment, so like put a glass dome over it. That condensation, that moisture is actually really good for it as long as it can still breathe. It likes that aspect. It loves a terrarium environment. So now that these are potted, I always like to water them very well. And that means watering them, I like it to run out the bottom. So I have trays under them. And you can see this is how I'm gonna water it. Here from the base, I'm gonna make sure, which the soil is already moistened and that's good, but I'm gonna water it around, and this is how I would water it whenever I go to water the plant. I wanna water it underneath the leaves. If you water it down the center, especially here on a bird's nest fern, it can rot it, and that's where the crown is, that's where new leaves are coming, and that's not good for the plant. So instead I water it underneath. And when I water them well. I like to make sure that they're really well watered, same with the maidenhair. And then with any of these ferns, I'm gonna spritz them every so often. During these winter months, my house is extremely dry, like 30% or below humidity, because the heat is on and it's just dry. So I could spritz them probably every day and they would still be happy. So this one, I have a plastic tray I can just put under it, and that's where it will live inside of this other container. It will have a tray underneath it so I don't have to worry about it. We water plants well because you want them, one, after you plant them, watering well gets out all the extra air bubbles. And air bubbles inside the container around roots can actually dry out sections of roots and cause some death. You don't want that. Just like with humans. They need the right amount of oxygen, but they don't want to dry out. So that's what watering does. It also just makes sure everything is evenly saturated. That's why we like to have a container that actually contains the roots and isn't too big. Because if this container was 3 times as big, you'd be watering soil that had no roots in it. Instead, you just want to water where the roots are. And you can see the water's collecting below. That's perfect. So now what I'll do is I'll empty that out and I will discard that water away. It doesn't need to sit in water because that can also cause rot. Now these are at a place where they're gonna be somewhat able to be happy and healthy. They want good bright light. They don't need direct sunlight, but a lot of bright light. If you get worried, look, this is gonna happen, you guys. You're gonna get little pieces of brown. You're gonna get pieces that maybe die or don't do as well. Don't fear. Go in there, cut it off. Cut off any that doesn't look good. Like here's a stem, a whole frond that it kind of just died, and that's okay. Pull it off. Don't be scared of it. This one I'm really excited because I think it will look really good in this container, and I've always wanted to use this container but not plant directly in it. And look at that. It looks so good. I love how it instantly, ferns just have that ability to really, they kind of fountain out, they branch off, and they just look good, and that to me is what's always exciting about them. And it kind of just gives you some really good life. So that's my tips and tricks. That's what I think will help you have a better life with your plants, hopefully be able to keep them longer. It's applicable for most all houseplants. For fertilizing, I think if you have a good organic and organically rich with compost soil, you're already farther ahead. If you want to fertilize with an organic fertilizer, during the winter months, I do it maybe once a month or every other week at half amounts. During summer, if these go outside, you could do it much more often, like every other week or every week, because they're in a climate and a feeling of to be their habitat, and they can take a lot more of the fertilizing. But otherwise, these should be happy and healthy, green, lush life. We'll watch them, we'll spritz them every so often with water. But this is gonna help make big box plant stores thrive, and that's the important part. How do we get these to thrive once we get them home? I think this will help. So as always, what I want you to do, share this video around, because guess what? We all have houseplants, and we've all killed houseplants, like me included. These tips can help us all maybe not have so much death and just enjoy them for longer. Give them years of life, put them outside in the summers. How exciting is that? So share it around because it helps me, helps everyone. Check my website, wiseguide.com. It has tips, it has tricks, it has recipes too. Has it all. But until it's summer and we can be outside, we're gonna be inside enjoying some green. So I hope you will too.